everybody, and welcome back to another episode of GameSpark. I am Susie Grace. Today is episode 10, and I have another fantastic guest who is here and willing to chat about games with me. So if you could introduce yourself, please go ahead and take it away.
Everybody, my name is MithLycos, usually known as Mythly on the CZ streams, and I absolutely think it's super endearing, so don't you dare change. So,
Wait, Mythly? Is it not Mythly?
It's MithLycos, so it's supposed to be Grey Wolf, but because I spell it so weird, because spaces were not a thing when I first created the name, it was just like I really like that. I like this.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep this. And so in some places where I can't use MithLycos for whatever reason, I've been using Mythly. So you know what?
Oh my gosh.
I
was today years old. Okay. All right. Continue.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll keep it. That's just what you are to me now. I can't change it. Now.
And I don't want you to.
Okay. Well, then that works. Yes. Mythly has been a member of my Twitch community for a while, and she is a delight, and I am very excited to hear all her gaming experiences and her opinions. So we are going to dive right in with our first question. My first question for you is, what is your earliest gaming memory?
Okay, so my earliest gaming memory, it's a little fuzzy, but growing up, we had one of those Atari 520 STs computers, and on the weekends, my brothers and I would get up super early because we were already wired to get up early in the morning for school anyways, and we would sneak into the living room and turn it on, and we would, depending on who was awake, we would either play Time Bandit with each other, or we would play a game called Starquake, which is a single player. And for the life of us, because we couldn't read very well, we had no idea that the game was called Starquake. So I was like years old when I learned that the game was actually called Starquake, because for the life of me, I called it Space Blob my entire life. Because he was a little blob.
Because that's what it was.
So
why was it called Starquake? Okay. All right. I've never heard of either of those games, but then again, I never played Atari.
Yeah, so Starquake was, you were just this little alien guy, your ship crashes on this alien planet, and you're supposed to find little pieces and put them together to make a ship or like rebuild your ship. I don't remember because I was like 4, 5.
Yeah.
And we were just like, okay, find this piece, put this here, put this code in, go over there.
Nice.
And try not to die and shoot little lasers at things.
Yes, try not to die. That is key. We try not to die. What was the other game that you said?
So the other one was Time Bandit. It was a 2-player that we totally played it wrong, but we all had fun anyways.
That's what matters.
Where when you play 2-player, if one of the players dies, they become like this shadow that still follows you around, so you can still interact with the world, but you can't pick up any of the treasures. You can kind of sort of interact with some of the puzzles, but the way we would play is the person who got the short straw would be player 2, who you would just kill off immediately so that they could be the shadow who would just walk into the monsters so that he would like take out the monsters so the other person could go and collect the treasures.
That is teamwork. That's amazing. That is absolutely teamwork. I love that. How many brothers do you have?
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Oh, okay. So did you play games with your sisters, or was it only your brothers?
Much later.
Okay.
Just because of age difference, because it was me, then my brother, and like years apart, and then there was like a couple of years gap, and then my next sister was born, and at that point, just enough of a gap that it was a little harder to play some games with them.
That makes sense. That does make sense. What is your Spark game?
I have to say that the thing that kind of made me feel like I could play games was a night that we were being babysat, and the babysitter kind of gave us this, okay, you get to play one game, and as soon as you die, you get to go to bed.
No.
And
high stakes.
So high stakes. So
Yes.
we kind of like sat and pondered it for a bit, and for me, I chose Centipede. So I'm playing Centipede, and
On what? On the Atari?
On the Atari. And
okay.
So I'm playing Centipede on the Atari, and I beat the first level, beat the second level. I'm about to beat the third level, and this is, I've gone and overstayed my bedtime by at least like 20 minutes at this point, and she kind of like does this sneaky, oh, well, you died, and she like turns it off. And it's like, hey, wait a minute.
That is unacceptable. What? Rude babysitter.
I know, but it was a thing that neither one of us expected to happen.
Yeah.
It's because my brothers, they got to play first and they died almost immediately. So we just figured that was going to be the same thing with me, because up until this point, I really never got very far in playing Centipede. I was always playing some other game. And, it's just like, okay, I could probably play a little bit of this one and then go to bed. And it just kept going.
So this just in. Mythly is really good at games. Has been ever since she was so small. So good that the babysitter had to be like, oh, you died. Click, turn off the...
I was like, hey!
That's not fair. That's not what you said. Trust issues. That is terrible. So that was the first game that you felt like really kind of made you realize, hey, I can play games. Like I can do this. Do you remember the first game you played and beat all on your own?
It's down to 2, and I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure if the first one actually was beat by myself all the way from start to finish, or if it was actually the second one. The first one was Lucasfilm's Loom. I'm not sure if Loom.
Okay.
Okay, so you are a person who is a weaver, and you essentially like weave the world with like the strings of reality kind of thing, and you weave them by using musical notes. You string 4 notes together and it creates a spell that makes an effect in the game.
I'm gonna write it down. Okay. Loom? That sounds so intriguing.
We would essentially tag teams, like, okay, we would say, okay, write down these notes, or we would scramble them down as fast as we could in our little notebooks and stuff. So,
the gaming notebooks.
Yeah, gaming notebooks, the binder that's like this thick and everything with all of the spells and everything.
Yes.
But I can't remember if that one was a tag team. Someone would write down this score for me, and then I would put it in when I would have to go and cast the spell. The second one was actually part of a race that my brothers, and to an extent my dad, used to do. Is we would find a game and we would race each other to see who could beat the game first.
Oh, so it wasn't like a racing game. It wasn't
a racing game.
Okay.
It would be like, I have time to play, so let's see if I can get further than you.
Got it.
And this one was Westwood Studios' Nox.
I've never heard of that one either. Look at you. And my last interview was a whole bunch of games I'd never heard of either. This is adding on to my ever-growing backlog. Tell me about Nox. Tell me.
So Nox is, you are just some dude who just lives in, modern America, who gets transported into this fantasy world, and your game immediately branches into one of 3 ways. You could either be a spellcaster mage, you could be a conjurer, or you could be straight up warrior. And all 3 have similar branching ways, but then they all meet at the end to go and beat the big bad at some point.
Oh, interesting.
So they all play differently. They all have slightly different storylines. You all go to the same spots, but how people interact with you, depending on where you are, is different depending on what class you are.
Okay, what's the difference between a mage and a conjurer? Aren't those the same?
So in this one, the mage they do just straight spells, and you use wands and use staves and you shoot fireballs and stuff like that.
Sounds legit.
The Conjurer actually was more of a beast tamer type character.
Oh.
So they had ranged weapons, so they had bows, they had chakrams, and then they would learn spells to actually tame beasts and monsters that you interact with during the game, and then eventually get to summon them in the middle of a fight if you have, the particular spell that says, oh, I can go and tame, giant spiders. Well, now I'm going to summon a giant spider to fight with me.
Oh my gosh, both those games sound so fun. And it doesn't really matter which one was the one that you technically beat first, because obviously both of them stick in your mind. And I think that's fantastic. So here is my next question for you. What are the top 3 games that have affected you the most?
Okay, so this one, I actually had to narrow it down to 3 because there were a handful that kind of like kept going and just like, don't have that much time, otherwise we'll be here
Right.
until tomorrow.
Right, I know.
The first one and the earliest one is actually another computer game. It's a Sierra game called Manhunter 2, the second one, which is based in San Francisco.
Okay.
And the reason why this one impacted me the most is it's actually the first game that portrayed a real location that I have since been to physically in like a digital media. So we were going to these locations in game trying to solve mysteries and, you know, figure out what's going on. And later on, you know, some years later, my dad says we're going to go and visit family in the San Francisco area. And part of the visit that we were there is we actually went and traveled to a bunch of the locations that were in the game.
Nice.
So we knew, you know, Ghirardelli Square, that's a place in the game. And
Yeah.
we went to Ghirardelli Square or Embarcadero Park or, you know, the tower that I can never remember the name of, but it's the giant triangle one that everybody can see and they know that's there, and or, you know, the pier. And we went to all of these locations and it was like,
I know that. I know
I was
that
like,
place.
I know this one. So it's
I
just
solved
like
the
every
mystery
time,
there.
I solved the mystery there, and I, you know, solved the puzzle over there. And it's to this day when I see these locations, you know, on screen, you know, this little child in the back of my head says, you know, I did a thing there.
That's actually
like, I've
really
been to this
adorable.
location.
That's so cool. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I've ever had that experience. I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking on the fly, but I'm trying to think if I've played a game in a place where I've actually been. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. What a cool experience to like experience that virtually as a kid and then experience it like in real life. What is your second game? Second top game?
So the second one was actually Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. That was my
Yeah.
It was my very first non-point and click adventure game.
Okay.
So I grew up on Sierra games. So, you know, everything from all of the King's Quest games to the Manhunter games to like a couple of other like Sierra-based games. And this one was the very first one that didn't require me to point and click and tell them to go to a certain location or type in a bunch of, you know, look at this thing. And it just, I got to explore a world more freely than I could in like the King's Quest games. I could do things in any particular order that I wanted. Mind you, that was not necessarily the smartest thing to do, but the game would let me do that.
Yes. You had the freedom to do that,
I had
to
that
go
freedom
anywhere.
that I didn't have in like the King's Quest games. And I mean, I love them to bits. They still have a special place in my heart, but you know, Link to the Past was that one that just like opened up this new gateway to I would go and rent it from Blockbuster so that I could beat it because I didn't own it for myself until like much later. So it's like I get it. I make a new save because, you know, you can't keep the save on a rented game.
So you started it over and over again?
I would have to start it over and over and over.
Okay, tell me what all the beginning lines are then. Tell me all of them.
I don't even want to.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
We don't have time for this. Third most impactful game is actually much more recent. Is actually the first BioShock game. That impactful time where you learn, you know, that whole delivery of a man chooses and a slave obeys, and how that gets like you make so that all of these things kind of like come together at this point in the game, and you realize that you've just been this puppet. Kind of happened at a time where I was getting a lot of mental help for myself, and it just made this huge impact that I made this realization in the game as I'm making these same realizations for myself, and it just kind of like hit me to the point where at the end of the game, which answers another question that I'm pretty certain you're going to ask, that yes, I did kind of sit and cry to myself afterwards.
Well, that's a huge thing for you though. I mean, that's what an incredible kind of discovery to make as you're playing a game. This is one of the many, 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 many reasons I love video games so much, is they can be, not all of them, but they can be so much more than just a game. I mean, they can make you think certain things. They can make you realize certain things about yourself, about other people, about how you treat other people or how you want to be viewed or whatever. And so that doesn't surprise me at all. I'm sorry you were going through a rough patch when it's kind of a dark game to...
It is a dark game.
It's really
and
dark.
I was coming off of a whole, like, I've been playing a lot of Bethesda games at this point, and I really didn't, like, come out of this little box. So this was, like, my little venture out into something different than what I was used to. And it was part of this thing that opened up this huge world of games to me and allowed me to branch out into, like, so many different directions that I didn't even think I could go into.
Well, then that is a perfect segue into my next question. The question is, are there any games that have made you cry, which you've basically already answered. Do you want to talk about any of them?
Sure. Yes, there are other games that also have made me cry. And I admit I am a sap, so I will cry when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm super angry. Yes, so BioShock and Infinite did cause me to sit for a while after completing them, and I just kind of thought about my life for like a good 10 minutes and just cried. And I still, to this day, can't listen to the French song, and I am sorry to anybody who speaks French. I do not. But the song La Vie en Rose.
Oh, yeah.
That song still makes me get that squeeze in my chest and feel like I need to cry because of how impactful the end of the Infinite DLC, like continuing mission that happens after the main game is ended.
Okay.
So I mean, it was just an incredible like final experience, and I was listening to the radio and it's just like, well, now I'm crying.
Sometimes it just hits you, man.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
It does. Another one was actually Final Fantasy VI, which I also highly recommend.
I own it.
I
own it now. It's on there.
Now,
it's on my list.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Do it. There is a scene, and I played that one when I was much, much younger. And there is a scene there where the main bad guy does something, and I was just so angry that I just cried at the screen because of how mad I was.
So this wasn't like a sad cry. This was an angry cry.
I was livid cry.
Interesting.
Like, why are you crying? I was like, I'm so mad.
I'm so angry.
Yeah, I'm so mad. He was like, why are you mad? He did this thing. Like,
sometimes our emotions, this is something I'm learning over the course of doing these interviews. Sometimes that question is kind of an interesting one, because when I came up with that question, I was thinking sad tears, because that's kind of like, because I had just come off, well, the whole reason I started this podcast was because I was told I was a waste of space for crying over Tears of the Kingdom. By somebody in a comment on one of my videos. So when I came up with that question in my head, I was thinking, have any games, made you cry, like sad, emotional cry? But really, there are a whole host of reasons we cry. Yeah. We can cry for joy, we can cry for anger, we can cry for sadness, we can cry for all those different things. And so it's become a really interesting question. And you just proved that right there, the fact that you were so angry.
I was so angry. I was like angry crying, ugly crying at, my game, and just like, maybe you should take a break. It's like, no, I was determined to beat him. Those were the biggest ones that had the hugest impact. I'm sure there were other games that also had that, Dust and Elysian Tale did make me cry a little bit near a couple of scenes. Okay. One of which was almost immediately trounced by a scene that I didn't think was necessary. So it's just like, why is this even here? My immersion mood is broken.
Oh,
it's just
bummer.
Like, why? This was unnecessary. But these other scenes were very, very well written, and especially at the time that I was playing them, that it was just like, well, now I'm crying. I was like, why are you crying? Okay. It's just so sad.
You have recommended that game to me, so now I will be aware. I'm going to switch my last two questions, actually. So sometimes people's games that affected them the most are also their favorite games. But just in case the games that affected you the most are not your favorite games, do you have like your top 3 favorite games of all time?
So
Okay.
BioShock and BioShock Infinite, they stick together in that, top, set of games because of how impactful they were in my life and how very well written they were. Horizon Zero Dawn.
It's one of my favorites.
Yes.
Love that game so much.
It's just, the writing was just incredible. I wanted to find all of the lore. I wanted to know what happened. And you learn all of these things about, what happened in the past and why things are happening now the way they are. And it just, that was so very well done. The amount, I was back doing, Final Fantasy VI, said how you could have so much displeasure for a particular person who isn't even real because of how well they were written. It just was just like,
I know who you're talking about.
Yes. So it was just like, why
yes.
would you do this?
Yes.
And the way that, someone who could write this and then have people who can act this out and voice these things and gets that mood that goes over just so well, you can't help but, just love something that invokes these type of feelings.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you are literally there taking down giant robots with, just a bow and arrow and a spear.
It's like,
and your wits.
It's literally unlike anything I've ever experienced in a video game. Like the feeling you get when you take down a mechanical dinosaur basically is like, unreal. So good. So that is an excellent top game of all time.
Yeah, and I have to say, I can't not say Zelda Breath of the Wild. Because I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom yet. That's on my to-do list of backlog that's like a mile long.
Yeah. And continues to grow, I'm sure.
And continues to grow.
Game developers just won't stop making games. We need to we need to catch up, and then they can start making games again.
Yes. Take the time you need to make the good games.
Yes, yes.
At the first time.
Breath of the Wild was also one of those that I feel like I've kind of been... Yeah. I mean, I've played Tears of the Kingdom, but Breath of the Wild was like a totally life-changing...
I loved, as you said, as I've said, I loved Link to the Past, Majora's Mask, really did a number on me in a way that is this is incredible. It's just like this little conglomerate of, BioShock Infinite, Horizon Zero Dawn, Breath of the Wild.
That is an excellent bubble of top games, if I do say so myself.
I mean, there are definitely other genres that I do play that, I come back to, but there's always those games that I just keep thinking about that have nothing to do with the game that I'm playing.
Because you love them so much.
Because I just love them so much.
Yeah, they've affected you a lot.
Yes.
So here is my last question for you. Why do you play video games?
For the most part, I play video games because it just gives me the ability to go on adventures that I wouldn't be able to do in real life. I can go save the world, or I can, explore ruins of a lost civilization, or I can, solve a mystery of some sort, or, just run in with just a hammer that's bigger than my head, and, be this, tank that, is saving somebody else from something, I can, be, something that I'm not, and not in I can be, anything. I can be, this giant lizard monster, if I wanted to be one, why not? Ride a dinosaur into the sunset because I can.
Yep.
Because it's something that you can't do, and it's just the fantastical just actually grips at me in a way that, that was the whole reason why I absolutely hated reading the assigned books that you had to read in school. Mind you, I read them anyways. I hated every moment of it. But, I'm also there in the back reading, Dragon Riders of Pern, and things that have to do with outer space or dragons and and anything that wasn't something that was based in reality.
Yeah.
Because of just that, series, that sense of wonder that you can get to go and this, be something that you were not. Be that superhero, be the supervillain. Why not?
You can be. Yeah. Their possibilities are endless. It's really amazing what video games have kind of become and all the options that they have. We sure have come a long way since like Pong, you know, lots
Yes.
and lots of improvements there.
And you know, it comes a long way from like playing, you know, those text-based adventures like you are in the dark room, what do? I turn on the light, you know,
Yeah.
versus, you know, you are there in VR, just like you're in the dark room, what do?
What do
I'm
you
gonna
do?
scurry over there into that corner, you know? So you're like crouched like some weird, you know, Gollum hermit in your living room, you know, just acting out the fantasies. But that's literally, you know, the gist of it is that feeling of, you know, non-realism that just pulls you into it.
You can
That
live
allows,
so many lives.
yeah, they're just like why be just, you know, not saying that we're boring, but why be our boring selves when we could be so much more? And it's not the same as, you know, watching a movie and saying it would really be cool to be in the movie, because in a game you are the main character, you are the movie, you are. That's why, you know, people can watch scary movies but can't play scary games, because it goes from you yelling at the screen that the person is dumb to it's my fault that the person was dumb.
Or you
know?
can just be like me and just not do either.
Or you don't do either.
Because I'm a scaredy cat. I can't play scary games or watch scary movies. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to it out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy person, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to sit and chat about games. But it's obvious that you're passionate about games. You're very knowledgeable about games, and they obviously have had an impact on you. So
yeah,
I love that. And I just really appreciate you telling me your stories.
Thank you for like actually creating the Game Spark, because I actually, some of these games, though they've impacted me as much as they have, you know, I haven't thought about in a while. It was just like, oh yeah, this thing that just these feelings of nostalgia that I had just by talking about it. Was a really good thing, and I really am thankful to be having a chance to let you experience that with me to an extent. So,
Awesome.
I mean, thank you.
Thank you.